Hello my friends, today we will take a look at Fujifilm X-S10. The X-S10 represents the pragmatic side of Fujifilm's lineup. It is an upper mid-range camera that packs a lot of performance in a very small body. It is also Fujifilm's latest entry in the very competitive sub $1,000 category. I can already say that it offers a lot for that price. In this video we will take a look at the performance and the feature set of X-S10, and I'll try to help you decide whether you should get one. Once again, the size of X-S10 has caught me by surprise. Despite that it has an APS-C sensor, in-body image stabilization and viewfinder, the footprint of this camera is still smaller than 5.8-inch iPhone. That makes it very portable and convenient to travel with. The build quality is also surprisingly good. It uses magnesium frame and all of the surface where you are supposed to hold the camera is rubberized. I can definitely say that it feels like a premium product. The build quality of X-S10 is basically on par with X-T4, which means that it is at least a class above X-T30. The design is pretty minimalistic. It still looks somewhat vintage and I can say that I like it, although not as much as the X-T4. One of the biggest strengths of the X-S10 is that it uses the same sensor and image processor as the X-T4. X-Trans4 is a well-known 26.1 megapixel backside illuminated APS-C sensor. This is the sixth camera with this sensor that I am testing, so there isn't really anything new that I can tell you about the image quality. X-Trans4 sensor is in my opinion still the best crop sensor on the market. Thanks to the latest technology such as backside illumination and fast readout, it is great for both stills and video. Especially the dynamic range is very impressive. If you keep the ISO low, the dynamic range is not that far from full-frame sensors. On the other hand, it is a big step up over Micro Four Thirds sensor, especially in high dynamic range scenes. The low light performance is also very solid. The images are very clean up to ISO 3200, and even 6400 is usable in most situations. As I've explained in previous videos, there is a shift in ISO in comparison with Sony because they use different ISO scales. 26 megapixels is a very nice resolution for all-round use. If you combine this sensor with a high-quality lens, such as the 16mm f1.4, you can get very detailed images. Overall, the X-S10 offers the best image quality that you can get with a hybrid camera under $1,000. Fujifilm is also well known for their film simulations. By default, you can change those by rotating the dial on the left side, which is quite engaging. All of the simulations introduced until now are available on X-S10. My most favorite are Classic Chrome and Classic Negative. Basically, the only new internal component of the X-S10 is the in-body image stabilization, so let's take a look at that. Please keep in mind that this is a pre-production unit, so the final performance may be a bit different. It is rated for 5 stops, but I was pleasantly surprised by the efficiency. At wider focal lengths, it is more than sufficient for panning or holding the camera still. The footage at 16mm is super stable. I am very happy with that. In-body image stabilization can also work together with optical image stabilization in the lens. Hybrid stabilization also works great. It is very effective even at 50mm. It can provide 6 stops of stabilization with stabilized lenses, which is now a big strength of Fujifilm. Considering that the X-S10 has a pretty large sensor in very small body, the size to stability ratio is pretty incredible. The autofocus performance in stills mode is basically identical to Fujifilm X-T4 with the latest firmware. It uses the same 425-point hybrid system. The focus acquisition is extremely fast and it is 100% accurate. There is basically no hunting with this autofocus system after the updates. Even in low light, it locks on every time with no issues at all. The tracking is actually very good as well with this system. Overall, I can say that the autofocus in stills mode on X-S10 is very good. For video, there might actually be some firmware improvements over the X-T4. The speed and accuracy has never been an issue with the system. The speed depends on the custom settings and the accuracy is again 100%. The only issue used to be a slight pause during the focus transition and the smoothness with some lenses. I have tested the autofocus mainly with 18 to 55mm f2.8-4 and I haven't noticed any of those issues. The autofocus just worked great overall. I don't have any major complaints about the performance. On the other hand, there is still no touch tracking in video, which is a bit unfortunate. Overall, I am very happy with the autofocus on X-S10. The video features are basically the same as with the X-T30 or X100V. It can shoot 4K DCI up to 30 frames per second internally. This is a downsampled 6.2K video, so it captures a ton of detail. It can shoot up to 200 megabits per second. It can only shoot 8-bit internally, but this codec is very solid and it gives you a lot of options for post-production. A huge advantage of Fujifilm for video is Eterna film simulation. Eterna offers a great balance between capture dynamic range and ease of color grading. I have also had very good results with F-Log despite that it is 8-bit footage, but I prefer Eterna overall. A big difference in comparison with X-T30 is that the X-S10's magnesium frame acts like a heatsink and it raises the 4K recording limit to 30 minutes. X-S10 can also output 10-bit 422 video externally. If you have Ninja V for example, you can get excellent ProRes HQ codec. Another upgrade over X-T30 is that the X-S10 has a normal 3.5mm input jack. You can also get headphone output by using USB-C to 3.5mm adapter, which is included in the box. The video from X-S10 just looks great overall, and it is outstanding for camera in sub $1,000 category. As I have said, the X-S10 represents the pragmatic side of Fujifilm's lineup, so it has pretty normal DSLR style controls and mode dial. The grip is in my opinion very good on X-S10. Despite the small body size, it is still sufficiently deep and very well shaped. As I mentioned, the rubber texture is also very nice. The handling will be completely fine even with larger lenses, so thumbs up for the grip on X-S10. Despite the size, it still has 3 command dials and joystick, which is great. On the other hand, it has very few buttons. There is no D-pad. Instead of that, you will get a joystick. Personally, I am completely fine with that. I much prefer joystick and space saving over the D-pad. There are still all of the essential buttons for menu, playback, ISO, white balance and so on, but there aren't any free custom buttons. Fortunately, Fujifilm has a great quick menu. That one is fully customizable and it can be operated using the touchscreen and dials. That is my favorite way to change most of the settings on the go. A very important thing for me personally is that it is possible to have separate settings for video like on X-T4. When you turn the dial to movie settings, it will load separate settings. What you change in there will not affect still settings and vice versa. I use very different settings for stills and video, so this is extremely useful for me. The main menu is relatively well organized, but it starts to feel a bit outdated in late 2020. It also still can't be controlled using the touchscreen. Just like with the IBIS, I think that the X-S10 offers great size to handling ratio. I appreciate the quick menu, but the main menu could use a more modern interface. X-S10 uses a 3-inch 1.04 million dot display. It is a good panel overall. The brightness and the resolution is sufficient. It is perfectly fine for this category, but it isn't really anything special. It is a fully rotating display. As a non-vlogger, I still don't like rotating displays for the reasons that I've explained in previous videos. Having said that, this camera will be very appealing for the vloggers, and I acknowledge that it is the fastest growing market segment, so I understand this decision. The viewfinder is not that great to be honest. It uses 2.36 million dot panel with 0.62 times magnification. XS10 is still a sub $1,000 camera, and I generally think that the electronic viewfinder is an acceptable place for some cost saving. XS10 can shoot 8 frames per second with autofocus continuous and mechanical shutter. If you switch to an electronic shutter, it can shoot 20 frames per second, or even 30 frames per second with 1.25 times crop. That is very impressive for sub $1,000 APS-C camera. The buffer is pretty small though. It can take 17 RAWs before the rate slows down, but that is to be expected in this price category. The XS10 has one UHS-1 card slot located next to the battery. That is again fine for this type of camera. The battery life is rated for 325 shots. That is not a great value, but that is the price for the small form factor. It uses the smaller NP126S battery rotated in the grip. I recommend having at least 1 or 2 spare batteries if you want to use it all day. Fortunately, XS10 supports very fast USB-C charging, so thumbs up for that. To sum up, Fujifilm X-S10 is a really great package overall. It really offers a lot for that price. First of all, you will get great image quality with X-Transfer sensor and processor. That means that there are no compromises in terms of output. The build quality is also outstanding for a sub $1,000 camera. In-body image stabilization is also a very pleasant surprise, especially if we consider the super portable body size of X-S10. The autofocus, video specs and controls are great as well. Of course, there are some compromises to achieve that price and size. Those are mainly the smaller battery and viewfinder, lack of weather sealing and smaller buffer. Some parts of the user interface also feel a bit outdated. In my opinion, all of those compromises are acceptable within this category. I haven't really found any major weaknesses of Fujifilm X-S10, which is why I can highly recommend it. So that's it for this video, thank you for watching, I hope that you liked this video and that you found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share your opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.